thanks so much for joining us. Just talk a little bit about your story. How did you go from a young girl with a vision or a dream to being a successful entrepreneur today?
Oh man. Okay. Are you ready? You have your coffee? It's gonna be a long one, but it 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 started growing up northern Nigeria fortunately has always been rife with conflict, and there's always been one religious crisis or the other that's been happening. And I grew up in that environment, and it got to a point where I remember very distinctively one episode where my mom and I were walking on our college campus, and there was just this mob of people that were coming, and they were armed with machetes and knives and all sorts of things, and we were right there, right in their path. And I remember just being completely frozen with fear for like a second. But then, we were able to get our wits about us and we were able to run away. But I think it was that really was like the turning point, because that had happened so often that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. This is no way to live life. And so it was with that in mind, I started to think about, what could I do that could help me get out of that environment? What did I need to learn to be able to sort of better myself and have more valuable skills? I was in college at that time, but Nigeria being a third world country, the we didn't have a lot of equipment. We didn't have stuff that worked. And so I felt like I didn't know anything, and I really wanted to feel like I knew something. And so that's sort of where the idea of starting to learn how to code came from. So it was very random. Somebody was just talking about. I was overhearing him talking to someone about this new coding platform, because at that time it was boys that do coding, girls don't really get into it. And so I heard him talking about it, and then I asked him, and he described a little bit more to me, and it just something within me just clicked. It was like, this is it, because I knew that at that point I didn't need any equipment, whether they were functional or non-functional. I didn't need any. My major was electrical engineering, so there was all sorts of gadgets that we used that didn't work. I knew that I just needed a laptop and some way to access the internet. And that's kind of how I went down that path of teaching myself to code. So I would go to the cafe, I would download a whole bunch of tutorials. My mom happened to get a laptop around the same time from like a government grant. So I would use her laptop and I would teach myself. And then I started working on a project. And it was doing that really also started to help me open my mind to how big the world was. And it's not just the little corner that I was in back in Nigeria. And it just continued to fuel the fire for me, continue to fuel the fire. In my dorm room, I would have a picture of New York by my pillow, and every night I'd be like, I'm going there, I'm going there, I'm going there. And so I just continued to speak life into the vision that I had. And it came to a point where I was about to give up, though, because it got really hard. It got really hard to teach myself. Like, this is stuff that people take 4 years to learn, and I was trying to do it in a few months. So I got to a point where I was completely stuck in my project, and again, it was a boys' world. Nobody around me wanted to help, so I just Googled the problem that I was having. Good old Google, saving lives since 1993 or something. So I Googled the problem, and then I found that there was somebody in India who had written a blog post about it. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, would you help me figure this problem out? Would you be my mentor? And he did. And so because he did, he gave me his time. I was able to finish that project, and that project was what formed the basis of my scholarship here in the U.S. So that's kind of how I got here. Again, it's a really long story, so you have to tell me where you want me to stop or what you want me to focus on.
So, when we think of technology's impact, it truly changed your life and the trajectory of your career. Tell us how you're now using technology as a way to help others and give other people the same opportunities it's afforded you.
Yeah. So, after I came to the US and I got my master's, um, I went on to work as a software engineer. But I think I always wanted a way to give back. The guy, his name is Sarub in India. The the time that he had given me, really, really made a difference. And it's something that I've always wanted to pay forward. So after working in corporate for a while and feeling the need to do something different, I decided that I was going to start a coding for kids center because I felt like, working with kids is a really great way to impact the next generation and allows me to pay it forward. What the time and the guidance and the mentorship that I had gotten that had changed my life. This would be a great way to pay it forward. And that's how and why I started CodeWiz. And it's so special to see, we're 4 years in now. And while we haven't seen people who have gone from kids who have gone from, they started at 7 and now they're software engineers, we're not quite there yet, but we're starting to see the impact. You would hear kids will say, I thought coding was boring, I hated it, but now all I want to do is work for Google. You would hear kids say things like, I never had any friends before, but now I have friends because they found their tribe. I don't like to use the word classify people as nerds, except myself. Of course, I call myself nerd in chief, but quote unquote nerds. They find all other nerds like them that they can just vibe with, and they can go off and talk about computers for hours and hours, and they don't get tired. So it's a safe place for kids like that, and that's been very impactful. And I think the final impact that even I did not anticipate is the impact that we have on the staff members, the coaches who work with the kids, because a lot of them are young themselves. So, high school seniors, college students, and, they come back telling us how their experience at CodeWiz paved the way for something bigger in their lives, or their experience at CodeWiz shaped their career decisions. One of them I met 2 days ago, and she's going to a PhD at, I think it's Duke University. And she said it was her time at CodeWiz that made her change majors to be a comp sci major, and now she's gonna get her PhD in computer science. So it's just amazing how, pain what one person did is having such a multiplying effect and is really impacting the world at this point.
That's really exciting. So congratulations
Thank you.
on your success. Tell us a little bit more about CodeWiz. What is CodeWiz? And then why did you decide to franchise it?
Sure. So CodeWiz is an after-school program for kids ages 7 through 17. We teach kids problem solving and help them express their creativity through coding and robotics. So we offer classes after school, and then when school is out, we offer a variety of camps. So like summer camps is coming up right now, and that's our main focus is getting ready for the kids that will be joining us in the summer. So that's what CodeWiz does. We believe that every child has an inner genius that's inside of them, and our job is to help them connect with and unlock that inner genius that they have on the inside. So that's CodeWiz. I started franchising because I had when I started CodeWiz, I had a vision of where I wanted it to be. In my mind at that time, if I had 5 locations in Massachusetts, I felt like I would be super successful. I felt like I would have made it, basically. And so that was my goal, that I was going to have 5 locations over 10 years in Massachusetts. So I started with that goal. 3 months into starting the first corporate location, my son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And so that just upended all my plan and all my big, hairy, audacious goals. I just knew that, with that diagnosis, there was going to be so much work that I needed to do with him to just help him lead a normal life. And so I knew that it would be very difficult to spin up five locations after that. But I think a recurring theme in my life is just never ever give up. If you find this huge obstacle in front of you, you find a way around it. And so that was a mindset that I had when I received this diagnosis was, well, I still want to have this, five locations. I was still thinking really small then. I still want to have these five locations, but I can't do it myself. So how can I make this happen? And I knew that CodeWiz was something that the world needed. And so I started to think about franchise. I'm like, okay, well, I could find other people like me, that are interested in starting their own business, don't want to start from scratch, and we can sort of build a brand together, and we could grow it into something big. And so that's how I started franchising. I always say that in retrospect, I probably should have done a little more research about franchising before I just jumped right into it. But I jumped in and we figured it out and we're making it happen. And so now it's been 4 years and we have 14 locations, 986 to go in the next 10 years.
Good for you. That's another audacious goal that
Yeah, the
sound
goal somehow just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
that's wonderful, and you sound very well positioned to achieve it. So it's exciting to hear that. What is your advice? How does one turn a dream or a vision into reality? How can you put the tangible pieces in place to actually make something happen?
I think that it's very important it is very important to have that vision, because if you don't have the vision, if you don't have goals, then you have nothing to aim for, right? And I think it's very important to have that, and that is step one. And I think the next step is to break down that vision into bite-sized goals. I find that a lot of people, think they have this big dream of, conquering the world, but they want to conquer it tomorrow. And that's just not going to happen. So you need to be realistic about what it is that you can accomplish um, in any given time, and then break it down into small bite-sized chunks so that way you feel like you're making progress. One day, if the first step is to just research what the options are out there, and you did that, then you feel successful and you know that you've taken one step in the direction of your goal, which might be 20, 30 years out. So that's the one thing that I feel like I see people missing is just, it's great to have this grand vision, but the war, you gotta eat that elephant one bite at a time. And so take it one step at a time, break down that vision into little teeny tiny chunks, weekly goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, 5-year plans, 10-year plans. And that way you will actually have a better chance of making that vision come alive if you break it down into bite-sized chunks versus trying from the get-go, just trying to go after the big vision. Is more likely to fail that way.
Thank you for sharing that. When it comes to franchising, is it hard to scale your vision? How were you able to put the components in place to ensure that your code, Wiz initial location is replicated or scaled exactly offering the exact experience that, you want to ensure people have?
Just to be honest and transparent, I think that is going to be something that will continuously be a work in progress. Um, what ends up happening when you're an emerging brand is that you tend to attract people who are more entrepreneurial. And what that means is everybody has ideas on how things should happen, how things should look. You know, they want it this way or that way. But what I have found has worked, and I believe that this is scalable because, let me backtrack. What I have found that works for now, and I believe that it is scalable, is explain to people the why behind why certain decisions were made, the why behind brand standards. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. Most people start franchising because they want to be their own boss. And then they come into franchise, and then now we're saying you can't do that and you can't do this. It starts to feel like you just bought yourself a new manager. But I think that if people understand why, here's why you can't alter the logo. Here's why you can't, you have to be thoughtful about, the images that you're putting on social media. Here's why, we have to adhere to these standards of services. And I think when people understand why, it's a whole lot easier for them to comply than when you just tell them, well, you have to. You don't have a choice. You have to do it this way. You have to do it that way. The entrepreneurial spirit is one that is naturally rebellious. And so when you're saying you have to, like if you tell me you have to, my natural response is, well, watch me do the opposite of what you want me to do. So, but explaining to people the why, I think I have found is super effective. And then what happens is everybody now becomes a brand police. When I tell you, hey, we have to protect our brand because that protects your investment. When you want to sell, if we have a brand that's diluted, your business is going to be worth less than if we have a brand that's strong. And now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I saw that guy. He posted something that he shouldn't have, and it just kind of works out really well from there. So that's the approach that we're taking, is just making sure that our franchise partners understand the why behind every decision and why we have certain guardrails in place.
That's a great explanation, and I appreciate your candor because it isn't easy, and clearly you're finding success in the way that you're approaching it because you're so passionate about and believe in, what you're doing. So I can totally see how people get behind that mission. So I appreciate your words.